Today we're going to talk about the 2001 psychological horror film Frailty. It stars Bill Paxton, Matthew McConaughey, and Powers Booth. I saw this movie in the theater back when it first came out, and today we're going to take a look at this new 4K UHD release from Lionsgate Unlimited, or Limited. It's Lionsgate Limited. It's not unlimited, I guess, because there's a limited amount of stuff that they put on there. But in this video, we're going to talk about this release. We're going to take a look at the packaging. We're going to talk about this new 4K transfer. We're also going to talk about the film itself. I'm Dave Watkins, Watkins Films. Now, I've been doing review videos on this channel for a little over a year now, but I've had this channel about 18 years, and you can check out my awesome web series and narrative content I was doing before I started doing the review videos. But as you can see, I am an avid physical media movie collector. So this movie takes place in two separate timelines, in 1979 and 2001. The present day part of the film, which I assume is 2001, though it could be 2000, the character played by Matthew McConaughey shows up at this police station saying he has information about a serial killer known as the God's Hand Killer. And he talks to an FBI agent there, played by Powers Booth, and they sit down and he starts to tell him the story. And it goes into fairly deep flashbacks to 1979 when he was a kid. And he says he's one of these two kids. Now there are two kids, and the dad's played by Bill Paxton. He's never named other than Dad. He's a single dad. The mom died during childbirth of the second child. And one day he gets a vision in his sleep from what he claims to be from God. And he shows up in there and he starts telling these kids, "Hey, I had a vision." He's like, there are demons out there who are taking over people, and it has been bestowed upon us by God that we have to go get them and kill them, pretty much. And he tells these two little kids, you know, they're pretty young. One of them's named Adam and the other one's named Fenton. Now, both of these are played by kid actors, obviously. But Matt O'Leary plays Fenton and Jeremy Sumpter plays Adam. Very awesome performances by these kid actors, drawn out by Bill Paxton, who plays the dad. He also directed the film, but apparently, according to the behind-the-scenes stuff on set, they kind of treated him like he was a real dad. He treated them like they were his real children. So Bill Paxton made the set feel very safe for these kids to really pull out these really awesome performances. Yes, it is a very dark horror film, but he does get really good performances from them, and they really felt safe on set. They didn't feel they said most of the time during the scenes it was pretty light what they were doing, and the scenes aren't light, but they felt light about it, and they were often laughed about what was going on. But this is pretty dark though the film is, and so he says that after this message from God, he has to go and get these weapons and things. He ends up getting 3 weapons, like an axe and a lead pipe and some gloves. And so they go and kidnap people, like real people, and he comes and they're tied up, and then he brings the kids in there with the axe, and he's like, we gotta kill this person, it's a demon. And then he takes off the glove, he has a glove on, and he touches the person, and then he says that he sees it as a demon. Now, of the 2 kids, one of the kids, Adam, is on board with this the whole time. He's just like, "Okay, Dad, are we going to be like superheroes?" And the other kid is Fenton does not want to get into this. He is very much against it. He doesn't maybe have the faith Dad and the other son have. Now, a lot of this is open to interpretation, but I think the way it's presented is definitely, to me, goes a certain route with the whole film. Now, the character Matthew McConaughey plays in the present day time is an unreliable narrator, as you find out later in the film. But as it's going, you start to already sense that some of the stuff he's saying may or may not be true. Now, some things by the end of the film that you see in front of your eyes are revealed to be true. By the end of the film, as a viewer, I think you get a pretty good idea about what was true in those flashbacks and what wasn't. But we can never know for sure. But let's take a look at this completely amazing slip box, this rigid slip box from Lionsgate Limited. Now, the only place you can get this, as far as I know at this point, is from the Lionsgate Limited site. So you have to go to the Lionsgate Limited and purchase this. And they've been doing a really good job with some of their releases. Like, say, check out this one, The Conversation. Now, this is a very thick box set of The Conversation. Now, there is a connection between this film and this film, and I'm going to get into that later. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to go ahead and tell you now. Both films have the same cinematographer, Bill Butler. And Bill Butler was also the cinematographer on Jaws. So that's and this cinematography in this film is really fantastic, and I think when the first time I saw it in the theater back in the day, that I really liked it, and I considered it a pretty good horror film. And this is a horror film that doesn't get very graphic with the violence. Now this came out 2001. Now at that time it was kind of, The Ring was the big thing, and The Grudge, so it was a kind of these Asian horror remakes, and this was just a little bit, like a few years before Saw showed up, and it really changed the landscape of horror movies, making them more, I guess you call it, more torture porn or more mutilation, graphic mutilation. Now this one could have been graphic, because they kill people with axes and things of that nature, but it doesn't. It stays away from it for the most part. There's a little bit of that, but it's never graphic, and it actually works really well. It kind of reminds me of some older horror films, but the way that it's shot, and the cinematography and the lighting, it all looks very it looks very cool here. It does, like I say, it does remind me of older horror movies. I'm going to show you a couple other films that it kind of reminds me of, like the Night of the Hunter. Now the cinematography and the lighting and the shadow play reminds me of movies like that. Now this is a more recent film, but the others, it reminds me of it as well. And this is an older film. I did do a review of this set. This is a Val Lewton Criterion release, and it has I Walk with a Zombie and The Seventh Victim. Now, The Seventh Victim is the one that reminds me a little bit of the way that this one's shot and the way that it looks, with the shadow play and the dark lighting and things of that nature. Now, let's take a look at this physical release. Now, I really like the front of this. Like I was saying before, you got Bill Paxton and his two sons. And see, he's got a halo around him, and this younger son has a halo around him, but then the other son doesn't. So it's a very telling about the film itself. And on the back, we have a little like, it's like a piece of paper here that shows the information about the film that we're going to read a little bit about here in just a moment. On the inside of that, you have just the axe Otis. Now the axe says Otis on it, and I was like, what does that mean? Why does it say Otis? And I thought maybe it would have some kind of religious meaning, but it doesn't. But it actually has a really good reason for saying Otis on it. Apparently, it wasn't in the original screenplay, but Bill Paxton added it so that when he finds the axe in this 1979 timeline, but when you see it again in the 2001 timeline, so you can identify that is the same axe from the earlier scenes, and so it makes sense, and you kind of gives the axe more of a personality by calling it Otis. So let's take a look at the inside here. Now we have similar artwork without the stained glass. We have the father and the two sons without the halo and all the angel wings and all that. We have a digital code on the inside, and on the back we have the axe Otis. Is a very similar picture that's on, I think it's the same one. We have two discs on the inside. We have a 4K and a Blu-ray. And we're going to talk about the difference between them in just a moment. I took a look at both of them, and they do look different. Now this is the most, we're probably, other than the 4K transfer here, but this is really impressive. There is a screenplay in here. Now this is Bill Paxton's screenplay, and it has his notes on it. It has some drawings that were scribbled on the screenplay, and you see these pages, like when you see the pink pages and the blue pages, that's for when you're shooting a film. And I've printed these myself before, and it always blows people's minds. But you basically, if you change something that you're shooting, and you don't want to have to reprint the whole screenplay, you give them these color pages, and then they put it into they take out the pages that they're numbered. They take those pages out, and then they put these into their binder. And a lot of times there'll be like a second one, like, see, this one says like 2A on it, and this really, like, some people who haven't done this much, when they see this, it really makes it really confusing for them trying to read a screenplay. What's interesting about this is there's also scenes in here that didn't make it into the finished film, so it's pretty cool to see that. There's especially in the opening part of it. Now you see this ambulance when Powers Booth shows up at the beginning of it. There's an ambulance already sitting there, but there's a bunch of scenes that take place before that where you actually see the ambulance arrive and things of that nature. So there are scenes in here that aren't in the movie, and vice versa. Now, as far as the 4K transfer of this film, I was very impressed. And there's also, which I'll talk about in just a minute, there's some extras, some new extras where they talk about what they did with the transfer and things of that nature. But this transfer, especially in the darker areas, there's a lot of exterior day scenes here too that look great. But very impressive with like the way the lighting is in the darker scenes and just those dark areas. Now they're supposed to be dark, but you don't see a lot of noise there. You don't see any grain. It looks very, very clean. And it was shot on film, so you do see the film grain, but it's there, but it's not distracting it at all. You have to look pretty close to see it. So it's a pretty tight film grain, very nicely resolved. And the colors here look very nice. I think that it has HDR on the 4K, and those skin tones just look very, very pleasant, very, very lifelike. And if you look at this compared to the Blu-ray, now the Blu-ray looks a little different as far as the color of it. I'm not sure if it's the same. I don't know if it's the same transfer or not. A lot of times they'll take that 4K transfer and they'll just like downgrade a little bit and put it on Blu-ray. The 4K, you're going to get a lot more like information as far as the textures and how much pixels you see on screen. But a lot of times when you have a 4K transfer on a Blu-ray disc, it also looks very good and it's hard to tell the difference. But you can tell the difference here pretty good. You can definitely tell there's not as much quality there, but the lighting and the color grading looks a little different. It leans a little more towards blue, and it's often brighter. Like it's brighter throughout the whole film, especially in the darker areas. But here, I'm going to show you some examples. Now here is an example of the Blu-ray. Here's the 4K of it, the same shot. Now I'm going to show you a couple others. Now here's the Blu-ray again, and there's that 4K. A little different, as you can see, the different. And one more, just for good measure. Here you go, the Blu-ray here, and there's that 4K. And these are pictures that I took with my phone of the TV screen, so they're not very accurate, but it kind of will give you the idea. If you take this and put it into your player, which I highly recommend you do, you'll see how awesome the 4K transfer is. Now, the Blu-ray doesn't look bad. I don't have any other previous copies of this. Like I was saying before, it was like when I saw this movie, I always considered it a pretty solid horror film. But upon this rewatch, I was blown away by it. I was blown away by the themes. I was blown away by the acting, especially Bill Paxton in this role. To me, this is one of his best roles. This is one of his most. It's the thing about Bill Paxton, just how sincere he is when he tells these kids what they need to do and what they have to do, and how they treat it like he treats it like he has to do it, and it can be scary in a way, especially when the other son doesn't get on board with it, and he's being told by an entity that claims that he's God, that he needs to do these things. Now this is kind of a hard thing. Think about an actual God doing this. It is a movie, so we have to do that. But to me, it almost feels like he's doing righteous work by killing these people. It is revealed he's doing righteous work. He's killing people because they may not necessarily be demons, but they are definitely bad people. But it's not necessarily thou shalt not kill. But he does have his own rule within the movie. He'll only kill people who appear on his list. This angel visits him, and the first time he visits him, that's another thing. This movie's often told in a flashback, and then in the flashback, Bill Paxton's character tells the son's stories that happened to him, and it shows another flashback of that. But Bill Paxton's working as an auto mechanic, and he's like visited by the angel. He sees it he's under the car, and he sees the angel come down to him, and the angel looks pretty crazy. You only see that one time, but he gives him a list, and he's only allowed to kill people on the list. It kind of keeps them in check. They can't just go and say this guy's bad, he needs to die. And this similar type of, it reminds me a little bit of something that came later, the show Dexter, where Dexter is a serial killer or maybe a vigilante who goes and kills other serial killers. But a show that really captures a lot of what this movie does, but it actually has demons in it instead of them being real people, is the show Supernatural. It even shows like Sam and Dean, they're young adults when it first starts. This went on for 15 seasons. A really great show, but it even has angels eventually in it and things of that nature. But it shows them in flashbacks as younger kids, and when their dad was training them how to kill demons and monsters and things of that nature. Now let's get into the back of this. I'm going to read you a little bit about the special features. There's audio commentary. Now these are legacy features on the 4K disc with writer-director Bill Paxton and with the director Bill Paxton and writer Brent Hanley. There's some other commentaries as well, but there are brand new limited extras here from that were produced specifically for this one. One called Father Figure, where they talk about Bill Paxton and his basically the way he acted with the kids and things of that nature. And it's got like several other recent things. It has like they talk about how they did the restoration and how they upgraded the audio. The audio sounds really nice as well. I listened to it on the television with just mono television, but everything sounded pretty nice to me. As far as what they said about the color timing on the 4K, I don't know if this applies to the Blu-ray, but they had the same guy who did the color timing back in the day, back in 2000, that had him come in and do the color timing for the 4K. And I got to say, he had notes on it. This is a really good transfer. I really like what they've done with this thing. So let's go ahead and rate the movie. I'm going to rate the movie, and I'm going to rate Lionsgate's release. I'm going to give this movie a 4.5-star rating. Before I watched it this time, I probably would have given it maybe 3.5 or 4, just from my memory. But upon rewatching this, I really think that this is a highly underrated film, and it really needs to be seen by more people. I think it is a nice gothic horror, and this is ultimately a heartbreaking film, especially with what happens to this family within the film. Now, as far as what Lionsgate Limited is done here, I'm going to give them 4.5 stars. I would have liked to have seen like a booklet in here with a little bit more information and some pictures, but this screenplay in here, that is very unique to this. I really like this rigid slip box and all of this artwork here. But let me know what you think about this film, if you've seen it before or if you've seen this new recent release. Well, you have to get this off of that site. It is an awesome release. I highly recommend checking it out. Maybe they'll eventually come out with a more standard edition that might be more affordable. But let me know what you think about it. And if you haven't done so already, if you would subscribe to my channel. And you see this box right here? If you click on this box, it's going to bring you to another one of my review videos, and you want to check that out. I'm Dave Watkins, Watkins Films. Thanks for watching.